Hey everyone, before we get into this, I just wanted to say this video is a lot different than what I usually make. There's no real script I'm trying to follow, no real lesson I'm trying to teach, and no point I'm really rushing towards. This is just me sitting down and finally talking through the things that I've avoided for a long time. Most of my videos are about ideas, virtues, growth, reflection. This one's about me. And honestly, I've been sitting here and it's making me a little uncomfortable. But I think if I'm feeling that, there's a good chance someone watching this feels the same way about their own life. So instead of cleaning it up or making it sound smarter than it needs to be, I just want to be open and honest. This video is me having conversations I never had with myself at different points in time in my life. Not to judge who I was, but to understand him, to see where the habits might have started or the change, where I lost part of myself and where I'm starting to find them again. You don't need to take notes, you don't need to agree with everything, you can just listen. And if something in this feels familiar, then maybe this video isn't just for me. Alright, without further ado, let's get into it. I wanted to start off younger than people would usually expect, because of a lot of who we become doesn't start in our teenage years or our 20s. It starts way earlier, from the roots, before we even have words for what's happening to us. When you're 5 years old, you don't understand concepts like abuse or dysfunctionality. Because to you, you don't have a name for it. You don't label things as wrong. You just absorb them. You assume that this is what your life is. This is what love feels like. This is how the world works. At that age, your parents are your whole universe. They're your safety, authority, and your whole reality itself. So when that reality is unstable, when it's loud and unpredictable or painful, you don't question it. You adapt to it quickly. And I learned from a very young age how to read the room, how to notice the shift in tones, how to tell when something was about to go wrong. I learned when to be quiet, when to disappear, when to stay small, not because I wanted to, not because I wanted to mature early either, but because I was scared. And fear teaches you fast. It didn't know I was developing survival instincts in the moment. I thought I was just being a good, well-behaved boy, right? I thought being quiet was a personality trait. I thought being hyper-aware was normal. But really, I was learning how to protect myself in a place that was supposed to protect me. And that does something to you as a person. And it'll carry on with you for the rest of your life. It taught me that love can hurt, that being close to somebody can also come with a risk, or that peace is temporary. And when you grow up with that, you don't grow up asking yourself, am I safe? You ask, how do I avoid making these mistakes worse? Or how do I avoid it entirely, right? And that mindset will follow you. It follows you into your friendships, into your relationships, into the way you handle conflict, to the way you talk about yourself. You become someone who is always bracing for impact, even when nothing is wrong. And the hard part is this: you don't even realize that it's happening because it's being incorporated so early. Because when the chaos starts at that age, it just feels normal. Calm feels suspicious. And looking back now, I don't feel angry towards the kid that I was. If anything, I respect the hell out of him because he did what he had to do to survive. He adapted, he learned, he endured. But I also see how much of my later life and how it affected me, the confusions, the attachment, the fear of abandonment, the need for reassurance at all times. It all started right there. Not because I was necessarily broken, but because I was shaped in such a fragile way so early on in life. And that's something I had to come to terms with before I could grow past it. And when I say things weren't safe at 5 years old, I don't mean it in a vague way. I mean, I learned fear before I learned how to explain it. The house was never calm. Voices were loud. Anger showed up so fast and without a warning at all. One moment things were normal, and the next everything felt like it could just fall apart. As a kid, you don't understand why it's happening to you. You just know you need to brace yourself. In my personal experience, verbal abuse cuts deeper than people realize, especially when you're that young. Being yelled at, talked down to, or made to feel small doesn't just hurt your feelings. It rewires how you see your self-image. Because if that's all you're told, you're gonna start believing that you are those things and you are the problem. You start believing that love is conditional. You start believing that being quiet is safer than being honest with yourself. And then there were moments when words weren't the only thing being used. Physical punishment. One of the worst things you can do to a person, especially a kid. And it didn't come with explanations or lessons. Like I said, it came with fear, with confusion, with the sense that your body wasn't fully yours, that safety could be taken away from you at any moment. And I didn't understand what I was feeling. I just knew that it made my heart race and my stomach stayed tight. My shoulders stayed tense, even when nothing was happening. And I don't think people talk about it enough. The way your body remembers before your mind does. I learned how to flinch. I learned how to hide behind everything. Because to me, that was how the world worked. Because of that, I started building these walls around myself long before I even knew what that even meant. I didn't just hide my feelings, I hid my entire self. My laugh got softer, my questions got fewer. I learned to anticipate anger before it arrived. I learned to hold my tongue, not just physically but emotionally as well. Like survival depended on it, because in that house it did. Even as a kid, I knew that if I showed too much, said the wrong thing, or moved at the wrong time, the consequences could be immediate. And so I became hyper aware. I became small. I became someone who could survive the storm by pretending it wasn't there. And looking back now, I can see how those early experiences followed me for years. How they shaped the way I approached friendships, love, and trust. How they made me cautious of honesty, fearful of intimacy, and constantly just prepared for rejection or conflict at all times. But I can also see the resilience that I grew from it. I see the part of me that learned to adapt, to read situations, to endure pain without losing all of myself. That part carried me through things I couldn't have survived otherwise, even if it meant I had to relearn how to really live later on in life. When you're a kid, you don't really think about identity. You just are, right? You feel everything fully. You laugh without checking who's watching. You cry without apologizing. You ask questions without worrying if they sound stupid. You imagine widely. You dream freely. At that age, the world feels open, possible, and safe enough to explore. But somewhere around that time, maybe you remember it too, something in you shifts. You realize that people are watching. You realize that reactions do matter, that approval can be taken away from you. And now I don't remember the exact moment where I decided to hide parts of myself. And obviously it wasn't intentional. It was very subtle. A comment here, a look there, a moment where being quiet felt so much safer than being honest. And I didn't lose myself all at once. I learned to fold the pieces of me that might not have been as appealing away. I learned which emotions were acceptable, which ones made people feel uncomfortable, which ones got ignored. And again, without realizing it, I started shrinking parts of myself to fit the room. And that's just a terrible way to live. It's survival. And survival isn't the same thing as living. And as I folded those pieces of myself away, I started to notice how much energy it took just to exist. Even something as simple as raising my hand in class, or saying a sentence, laughing at a joke. It required calculations that I shouldn't have had to make at that age. I became aware of the invisible weight of my own presence, like I had to measure it constantly to make sure it wouldn't disrupt anybody else. I also started noticing the subtle ways that people responded to me. The approving nod, the disapproving glance, the sigh when I spoke out of turn, and I learned to chase the nods and avoid the sighs. That pursuit of small approvals became almost addictive to me.
Necessarily, I was asking to not be punished, to not be noticed in the wrong way, to not make anybody else angry. And in chasing that, I almost forgot what it felt like to just be me. Some days I would catch myself staring at other kids who could just shout, play, and be messy without the consequences. And I'd feel a mix of awe and jealousy. How can they be so free? I had learned that freedom came with a price I wasn't ready to pay. And yet seeing them made me ache for the lost part of myself. The part that wanted to be loud, wild, and careless again. Even as I adapted, there were small moments when my spark refused to be hidden. When I laughed too hard at a joke I shouldn't have. When I got lost in a story or a game and forgot to calculate my place in the room. I caught a glimpse of who I could have been, and those flashes were fleeting. But they reminded me that the me who survived wasn't the full me, and it wasn't my full potential. There was still someone alive behind all those walls. Especially looking back now, I can see that this tension between surviving and living, between hiding and needing to be seen all the time, followed me for years and still shows up. It shaped how I approach friendships and love and trust. It made me so cautious in ways I didn't and still don't fully understand. And it made me crave connection even while I avoided it. And that 9-year-old me, who was careful and quiet as he could be, he deserved respect. Not pity or sympathy, but respect, real respect for surviving and adapting and noticing, for keeping a spark alive in a world that wanted me so small and shut out. Somewhere between the age 10 and 13, something changed. I met a girl, and I don't mean just any girl or mean just met a girl in a movie way. I mean, she actually noticed me. She talked to me like I wasn't invisible. She laughed at things I said. She remembered all the small details. For the first time in my life, being seen didn't feel dangerous. It felt comforting and warm. And up until then, attention had always come with risks. Being noticed meant being corrected or judging or getting punished. So I learned to avoid it. But with her, attention felt different. It didn't ask me to shrink. It didn't demand anything from me. It just existed. And I didn't have words for it yet. But what I felt wasn't just a crush. It felt safe. And at that age, you don't separate love from relief. You don't know the difference between affection and validation. All you know is that when you're around this person, your body relaxes in a way it usually doesn't. I didn't feel like I had to calculate every word. I could just be myself. I didn't feel like I had to be small. I didn't feel like I had to disappear. For someone who learned early that closeness could hurt so bad, that kind of connection feels almost unreal. So I attached to it. Not because I was weak, but because it felt like proof that I could be accepted as I was. I started tying my worth to how she saw me, to her attention, to her reactions. If she was happy, I was okay. If she pulled away even a little bit, something inside me panicked. I didn't know why. I just knew I didn't want to lose this feeling. And looking back now, I can see how early that pattern formed. I might not have been falling for her all the way, but I was clinging to the version of myself that I was allowed to be around her. And that's a heavy thing to put on another human being, especially when neither of you understands it yet. But that at that age, you don't know that you're building attachment. You think you're just feeling something special. You think you found something rare. And maybe you have, but you don't know how to hold it the right way or without gripping too tight. And what hurts the most in hindsight isn't that it didn't last. It's that I didn't know how to enjoy it without fearing its absence. That fear followed me. It taught me that love could disappear so suddenly. That closeness wasn't a guarantee. That if something felt good, it was only a matter of time before it was taken away from me. And very slowly over time, without realizing it, I started loving with tension instead of trust. What I didn't quite know at the time was that she wouldn't just be a moment in my life. She became 6 years, and I knew her for so many years before. We grew up together in a way that feels hard to explain unless you've lived it. From kids to teenagers to almost adults, side by side. Firsts layered on top of firsts, inside jokes, routines, shared pain, shared growth. She wasn't just someone I dated. She became familiar in the deepest way. Comfortable, safe, intertwined. And when something lasts that long, it stops feeling optional. It starts feeling permanent, like part of who you are. But here's the part I've had to sit with. The part that hurts to admit. I brought wounds into that relationship that I didn't understand yet. Fear of abandonment, hyper-awareness, a need for constant reassurance I didn't know how to ask for without shrinking or holding on too tight. I loved her deeply, she loved me, but I didn't always love in a healthy way. And there are days where I look back and I feel like I ruined her. Not because I wanted to hurt her. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know how to be whole yet. I see moments where my fear became pressure, where my silence became distance, where my constant need for safety, made me feel like she was responsible for my peace. And that's just so not fair to put on someone that you love, especially someone growing up alongside you. That realization sits heavy with me. But I've also learned this. Understanding your impact isn't the same as condemning yourself. I didn't ruin her. I was unfinished. So was she. We were two young people trying to love with tools that we never learned how to use. We were trying to build something real while still carrying things we hadn't healed from. What hurts the most isn't just the mistakes that I made. It's knowing I would do something different now. Speak softer. Listen longer. Give space without withdrawing. love without fear, sitting in the driver's seat. But growth doesn't happen in hindsight alone. It happens in responsibility. And loving someone for 6 years taught me more about myself than anything else ever has. Even the parts that I wish I had to learn sooner. Around 14 or 15, my body gave out before my mind ever slowed down. And I know I talk about this a lot, but I tore my ACL, my MCL, and my meniscus in football. And the injury alone didn't just take me out of sports. It took me out of the one place where I felt like I made sense. Movement was my escape. Routine was my stability. And when that disappeared, everything that I had been running from finally caught up to me. Surgery forced me into stillness. And it was brutal because my head wasn't a safe place to be. I went from constant motion to literally sitting with the pain. I was on the couch for months. And physically at first, but then emotionally. Days started to blur together. Rehab was slow. Progress felt minuscule and invisible. And for the first time, I couldn't distract myself with effort or achievement. I just had to exist. And that's when the tension with my mom got so much louder. We never really got along to begin with. Not in the way people expect mothers and sons to get along. Our relationship always felt strained. Like we were speaking different languages and neither of us had a translator. What I needed was understanding and softness, if you will. What I got felt like pressure, frustration, and constant misunderstandings. Or super obscene expectations. Every single interaction felt like I was doing something wrong, even when I was trying my hardest. I felt judged when I was already fragile. I felt like my pain was inconvenient to her. Like me being slow was a burden. And maybe she was overwhelmed too. I can see that now. But back then, all I felt was alone. The injury made me dependent in ways I hated. I couldn't move freely. I couldn't escape the house. I couldn't outrun the tension. And being stuck in a space where you don't feel emotionally safe does something to you. It made me withdraw more and more. I stopped talking. I stopped asking for help. I stopped expecting comfort from other people. Instead, I internalized everything. I told myself I just had to push through it. Be stronger. Be quieter. Be less for everybody. But that isolation sank deep. There were nights where the pain wasn't even just my knee anymore. It was in my chest, in my thoughts, in the growing sense that I was falling behind everybody else while still being misunderstood by the person who was supposed to understand me the most and care for me and love me unconditionally. And that period in time taught me a very dangerous lesson. That asking for support leads to disappointment. no matter what. And that vulnerability just created conflict. It's a lesson that I've been spending years trying to unlearn. And again, looking back at it now, I don't feel hatred. I feel grief for the version of me who was hurting and didn't know how to ask for help in a way that would be heard. For the relationship with his mother that never felt safe enough to land in. The ACL healed, the tension didn't. And that season in time shaped how I handled pain, still to this day. How I withdraw under pressure, and how hard it is for me to believe that I won't be a burden if I slow down. By 16 years old, something strange happened in me. I became okay. Not healed. Not happy in a deep way. Just functional. And the tension at home never really went away. The distance with my parents didn't just magically fix itself. If anything, it settled into something colder. Quieter, but still heavy. We coexisted more than we connected. Love felt conditional. Approval felt earned, not given. But I learned how to live with it. And that's the dangerous part. When pain lasts long enough, you can't stop calling it pain. Because that's all you know. And you start to call it normal. You stop asking why things hurt, and you just start to assume that that is how life works. So I stopped expecting warmth from my parents. I stopped trying to be understood by them. I told myself that I didn't matter to them, or it didn't matter to them, that I was almost out anyway, right? That once I graduated, everything would change. And honestly, that belief kept me alive. Because while things at home stayed rough, I still had the love of my life. She was still there, still choosing me, still grounding me in ways that I didn't even fully realize at the time. When everything else felt unstable, she felt consistent, familiar, safe. So I leaned into that. I told myself, this is enough. I told myself, as long as I have this, I'm okay. Once I graduate, I'll move on to better things. And for a while, I believed it. Graduation felt like a finish line. Like proof that I made it through. Like I survived the hardest part and earned a new chapter of my life. I thought leaving that house would automatically make me lighter. I thought distance alone would fix things. And I didn't realize how much I was carrying with me. I learned how to endure, not how to heal. I learned how to just keep pushing and not how to slow it down and actually feel my emotions. I mistook emotional numbness for strength. I mistook peacekeeping for peace. And because I had survived so much already, I assumed I could survive anything. That mindset made me strong, but it also made me blind. I didn't question the patterns anymore. I didn't question why love felt like something I had to earn. I didn't question why conflict made me shut down. I didn't question why I felt calm on the surface, but restless underneath it all. I thought this was just adulthood beginning. I thought the hard part was over, and I didn't know yet that all the unresolved pain doesn't just disappear when you're trying to move forward. It'll just sit there and build up and wait until you finally stop running. And at 18 years old, I was still running, just in a quieter sense. After graduation, I thought life would finally start for me. I thought moving forward meant things would automatically get better. New freedom, new clarity, a whole new version of me. But the truth is, I never really left. I didn't move out. I didn't escape the environment. I didn't create the distance I thought I needed. I stayed in the same place, surrounded by the same tension and the same unspoken resentment, the same feeling that I was tolerated more than I was loved. And when you stay somewhere that already taught you how to survive instead of heal, you're not just going to suddenly learn how to do it the right way. You just get better at numbing yourself. And that's when drugs and alcohol entered my life. Not because I wanted to self-destruct. Not because I wanted chaos, but because I wanted quiet. I wanted my thoughts to slow down. I wanted my body to relax. I wanted the edge to just disappear completely. Even if it was just for that night. And at first it felt harmless. Social interactions, something everyone my age was doing. And that's sort of the trap. When pain looks so ordinary, the coping starts looking justified. Drinking made me feel lighter. Substances made me feel distant from myself in a way that felt relieving almost. And for a moment, I wasn't the kid who grew up tense. I wasn't the son who never felt good enough. I wasn't the boyfriend who carried guilt and fear. I was just numb. But as we know, numb doesn't last. It fades. And when it does, everything will come back to you so much louder than before. The shame, the anger, the disappointment in myself. The realization that I hadn't moved forward at all. I just paused my pain temporarily. And what scared me was not necessarily how much I was using. It was why I was using. I wasn't running towards anything. I was running away from myself. And the longer that I stayed, the more stuck I felt. Like life was happening somewhere else, and I was just watching it through a window that I didn't know how to open or unlock. I saw people moving out, building lives, becoming something, and I told myself I was just taking my time. But deep down, I knew the truth. I was afraid. I was afraid of failing. Afraid of being alone, afraid of finding out who I was without distractions. So I stayed where things were familiar, even if they hurt me. And eventually, I hit a point where I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I realized that surviving had become my personality, that numbing had replaced all feelings in my body, that waiting had replaced all the choosing. And that scared me so much more than the pain ever did. Because pain means you're still alive. You're still capable of change. And that realization didn't fix me overnight. I didn't suddenly become disciplined or enlightened or clean in every sense of the world. But it cracked something open. It forced a question that I couldn't ignore anymore. If I kept living like this, who do I become? That question is where modern me begins. Again, not healed, not finished, but awake and aware. And for the first time, not running away. And like I said, modern me didn't just wake up one day, completely changed, a new human. I started small. In the uncomfortable moments, in the quiet moments, I realized I couldn't think my way out of life. I had to act my way forwards. That's why they all say actions speak louder than words. So I chose something that forced responsibility on me, something bigger than my own head. I joined the fire department, and I got in. For the first time in a very long time, I felt useful in a real way. Showing up mattered. Being reliable mattered. Other people depended on me. There's a structure, there's discipline, and there's purpose. Not the kind you post about, but the kind that makes you get up even when you don't want to. It reminded me that I wasn't broken. I had just been disconnected from meaning for so long. I started saving money with intention, not impulsively, not vaguely. I was saving with a plan to move out, to actually create that physical distance from the place where I learned to survive instead of heal. Every single dollar that I am saving feels like proof that I was choosing my future instead of waiting for it. And then there was therapy. It scared me a lot, more than anything else, or more than I would admit either, because therapy meant sitting still without numbing anything. It meant saying things out loud that I had spent my entire life swallowing. It meant hearing my own patterns spoken back to me without judgment, just clarity. I didn't go to therapy to be fixed. I went to understand myself. Why I shut down. Why I attach so deeply. Why conflict feels dangerous. Why rest makes me feel guilty. And slowly, I started separating who I am from what happened to me. And yes, I am still learning. I'm still unlearning and I'm still catching myself when old habits try to take over. But the difference now is awareness. The choice and the intention that I have. I don't numb the same way anymore. I don't lie to myself the same way anymore. I don't confuse survival with living anymore. I'm not perfect, but I'm very present. I show up, I take responsibility, I ask for help, and I'm building something instead of waiting to escape. And for the first time in my life, the future doesn't feel like something that I'm afraid of. It feels earned. I want to make this very clear because I know there's a lot of rude and incompetent people out there. I don't tell this story to paint myself as a victim. And I don't tell it to pretend I've made it out already. I tell it because growth didn't come from pretending my past didn't matter. It came from finally facing it without running away. I used to believe that. I used to believe that surviving meant that I was strong enough to ignore what hurt me. Now I understand that real strength is staying present when it hurts, choosing responsibility even when it's uncomfortable, and being honest about where you still need help. I'm still becoming, still learning how to live instead of just survive. But for the first time, I'm not ashamed of where I started or where I am now. And if you're someone out there in the middle of your own story, not necessarily broken or healed, just trying, I hope this reminds you that moving forward doesn't require perfection. I used to think the goal was to escape my past, to outgrow it, to become someone so different that none of it mattered anymore. But that's not how it works. You don't heal by outrunning where you came from. You heal by understanding it, by taking responsibility for how it shaped you, and by deciding what parts of it you're no longer going to carry forward. Every single version of me you heard about in this video. The scared kid, the quiet one, the attached one, the numb one. They're not enemies. They were all doing the best that they could with what they had. For a long time, survival was enough. But at some point, survival stops being noble if it keeps you stuck. Today, I'm not healed. I don't have my life figured out. I still mess up. I still feel fear. Still have days where old habits try to pull me back. The difference is how I see them. I don't pretend that they're normal anymore. I'm choosing responsibility over comfort, presence over being numb, growth over what's familiar. And that choice doesn't happen once. It happens every single day. If you're watching this and you see yourself anywhere in this story, in the hiding, the attachment, the numbing, the false peace, I want you to know something very important. You're not alone, and you're not weak. But you do deserve more than just survival. You deserve a life you're actually present in, a life you don't have to disappear to feel safe, a life where healing isn't rushed, but it's real. This video isn't the end of my story, just the moment I stopped lying to myself about it.
And if this is the moment you start being honest with yourself too, even if it's quiet or imperfect, then it was worth making it. Before I go, there's one more thing I'd like to say. Mostly to myself, but maybe to you too. For a long time, I thought healing was supposed to look dramatic. Like some scientific breakthrough. Like a moment where everything finally made sense and the pain stopped mattering. But healing hasn't looked like that at all for me. It looked quiet, repetitive, and boring. Sometimes even frustrating. It looked like choosing not to numb out things when the day got heavy. Like showing up to therapy even when I didn't feel like talking. Like saving money instead of spending it to feel something for an hour. Like going to work and doing my job well, even when nobody else was clapping. Healing has looked like choosing the long way instead of the easy way, the road less traveled. And there are days where I miss the numbness, days where part of me wants to go back to not feeling so much, not thinking so deeply, not caring so hard. But I've learned something important. Numbness doesn't protect you, it just delays the pain, and it steals the good with it. I also had to accept that some relationships may never look the way I wish they did. That some people may never understand my side of the story. And that closure doesn't always come from being hurt. Sometimes it comes from being honest anyway. And that's hard, because a part of me still wants validation, still wants an apology, still wants someone to finally say, yeah, that wasn't fair to you. But waiting for that kept me stuck longer than the pain itself ever did. So I'm learning how to give myself what I didn't get back. Patience, grace, permission to rest. I'm learning how to speak to myself without cruelty, how to slow down without guilt, how to exist without constantly proving my worth. And that might not sound revolutionary, but for someone who grew up bracing for impact constantly, it is everything. If you're watching this and you feel behind in life, I need you to hear this clearly. Being delayed is not the same as being defeated. Some of us had to spend years surviving before we even got the chance to build. If you're still here and still trying, you're still choosing to be honest even when it hurts, you're not too late. You're right on time for your life. I don't know exactly where I'll be a year from now. I don't know how long healing will take or what parts of me I still haven't uncovered yet. But I'm not running anymore. And if you take anything from this video, I hope it's this. You don't have to have it all figured out to move forward. You just have to stop lying to yourself about where you are. That's where real change starts. Wow, this is a long video. Thank you so much for sitting with me for this long and holding space for this story. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for staying. Thank you, genuinely, for being here. And if no one's told you this lately, I'm proud of you for still being here, for still trying, for choosing growth, even when nobody else is watching. I'm proud of you for facing your own story, for surviving your struggles, and for taking even the smallest steps towards the life that you deserve. Thank you all again. As always, stay Rohly.